What is up and what is good? Welcome into Slaughterhouse Sports, guys. Welcome. It is a Friday. Aaron Rodgers is moving at a snail's pace. The Aaron Rodgers situation, all the quarterbacks, even the veteran wide receiver market. I don't remember this taking so long. Listen, I can wait. There's some things in life that are very frustrating to wait on, such as, traffic or maybe an airplane delay. But waiting on Aaron Rodgers is just building up the suspense. However, just thinking about it longer, if you are the New York Giants, guys, the longer you have to think about the possibility of Aaron Rodgers, it's just getting more and more frustrating. I mean, you have the Minnesota Vikings as a late wild card to this race, the Pittsburgh Steelers. You really look at Aaron, and it's interesting because Mike Tomlin and Brian Daboll are kind of on the hot seat for different reasons. In college basketball today, we just had a coach that was 15 years into college basketball who had a great career in Fran McCaffrey. He's very similar to me to Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin. Now, because Mike Tomlin has had a great, career in Pittsburgh, and he's still having he's still in Pittsburgh. He's still employed by the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? So he's still in Pittsburgh. But if they go out and get Aaron Rodgers, there is a possibility that it could absolutely flame out because he is an ego. He is going to want things a certain way. And it's funny, I think the Giants and the Steelers would both take the risk of Rodgers, but the Giants and John Mara, this is really interesting just where the Giants are at right now. So the Giants are really fixing their secondary. They're getting younger. If you had Joe Schoen, and I would have probably even hired like Anthony Campanelli or a pretty young football coach to come into the New York Giants and lead this team. Because now with Daboll, you're putting these guys on a time clock where it's not advantageous for the franchise for it to be on this time clock. I mean, Brian Daboll is in his 50s. I haven't liked the emotional just turbulence of Daboll. I mean, I don't want a Pat Shurmur who's just so bland, meek, and that'll roll over like a leaf falling in the autumn fall in Hoover, Alabama. I don't want a coach that's just going to lay over and be an easy pushover. But you also don't want Joe Judge that's wild, that's making the players run laps, that is criticizing the players all the time. But Brian Daboll to me is more in the mold of Joe Judge. And I really don't like how he got on Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito. Apparently Shane and the New York Giants, they wanted to move up to 3 to go get Drake May a quarterback, and I don't view Drake May as a really good option. And then instead of playing Drew Lock, instead of developing Lock, they then put DeVito over Lock, which was a failure. So these guys don't know how to identify. They don't know how to identify quarterback. They don't know how to identify offensive line. I mean, Evan Neal looks like a bad pick. John Michael Schmitz has not been a stalwart at center. When you draft a center in round 2, you need that guy to be a great player. You need him to be very, very good at that position because you're overdrafting for what a center should be worth. All right? So the Giants, the plan with the New York Giants, guys, should be to be very patient. That is the ideal plan because the Giants are still pieces away. They have no right tackle. They don't have a great wide receiver 2. They don't have a running back 2. Their tight end is in Theo Johnson had 1 year. Who says he doesn't regress? He wasn't consistent even as a rookie. So the Giants offense, they don't have a guard and they don't have a tackle. I mean, Illuminor is kind of a guard, and he's an aging stopgap. He's a good guard if you're able to put him at guard. John Michael Schmitz as your center is not reliable. And then at right tackle, you have to play Illuminor because Evan Neal was a failure, so you have no tackle. You have no right tackle. So that is a huge glaring hole for the New York Giants. The also glaring hole is that at defensive tackle, you end up getting, Chauncey Goldston, who's a fine football player, but, he's pretty good. And then you have Dexter Lawrence inside. On the edges, I guess Ojulari's going to leave in free agency, so you just have Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. It's not awful, but it's not even that great. Your linebackers, you have Micah McFadden, who has trouble with injuries, and then Bobby Okereke, so you're okay at linebacker. And then your secondary now is actually looking pretty good. So defensively, the Giants are closer to competing to being a playoff caliber defense. Because if you get Paulson, you get Holland, you then have a really good slot corner in Phillips from Kentucky. I think it's Drew Phillips, and Tyler Nubin. The secondary is playoff caliber. The defensive line with Burns, Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Chauncey Goldston, it is not and Marlon Davidson, it is not a bad defensive line. Not bad at all. And then Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden as linebackers, and you might even draft another linebacker. The defense is getting a little bit better. But there are glaring holes still on this roster. And now let's talk about quarterback. So to me, this Rodgers situation, even though I said that I'd be patient and I'm not completely getting really, upset about Rodgers right now, it is still frustrating that Aaron's just, taking so long and that this process is moving at a snail's pace. And the more you think about it, Russell Wilson just does make sense. I mean, he'd be a one-year deal. He did, for the final couple of games in Denver, it is worth pointing out that kind of like Marcus Mariota and Derek Carr, like Russell Wilson, I don't know if he was there with Jarrett Stidham. I guess he did help out Justin Fields, but how would he be with a rookie quarterback? I mean, Russell Wilson, he's known in Seattle. He's known in Denver and Pittsburgh. He's a very, very nice religious person, Russell Wilson, and he is like pretty good character. But at the same times, like in Denver, what I didn't exactly, what is a little bit controversial about Russell Wilson is he did have to have a private room for Jake Heaps, his quarterback coach. He does come with a little bit of entourage. There are some former Seattle teammates that look at him as kind of this egotistical guy. So you do need to, again, you have to do your due diligence with Russell Wilson, but he does, I believe, come with less baggage than Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers might go on a national radio show. He might, pick the teammates apart. His moods can swing from, very to very. What else with Rodgers? I mean, Jermichael Finley and the guy Jennings, Greg Jennings, they said that they prefer Brett Favre over Aaron Rodgers. All right. So I know Rodgers and during the COVID year, he had some, opinions about that. And listen, I'm not going to get into that. I never want to get into that on the show, but some people are going to view him. He is a polarizing athlete. So in so many ways, the ayahuasca, the Pat McAfee show appearances, about a whole varying degrees of things. So I understand that there's polarization with Aaron Rodgers. All right. The thing is with Aaron, he's not the long-term solution. Neither is Russ. Now, this is what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about this. What should the Giants do at pick number 3 now? All right, now that free agency is kind of coming to a close. Their offensive line is still in shambles. Their secondary, in theory, should be a lot better. But I thought that the pass rush would be a lot better if Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, and it wasn't very consistent. Right now, you have Grant Morgan, who's a great addition to the staff. You have Kirk Ferenz's grandchildren on the staff, which I love that, the Ferenzes are helping out Brian Dable, because Iowa's had really good line play. So I'm liking this coaching staff. You have Shea Tierney. For all the talk about Mike Kafka not being satisfied with Brian Dable and him being, pissed off and really upset at Brian Daboll, unlike Wink Martindale, Mike Kafka still seems to really enjoy the New York Giants experience. It still is all right working with Brian Daboll. Joe Schoen and Daboll are still kind of getting along. So for the Giants, at pick number 3, these are the options now. I think that if Ward or the guy Abdul Carter, if they slip to 3, it's a no-brainer. You can't hand in the card faster. Abdul Carter can be an exceptional pass rusher at one of the most important positions in all of football. I think Abdul Carter, 1,000,000%. You take Abdul Carter. If it was even if you had the second pick and Travis Hunter went number 1 and it was between Abdul Carter and Cam Ward, it would be tough, but you would take Cam Ward. But Abdul Carter is like 1B to me. I view Cam Ward as 1A. I've been saying this, all since the Miami season was wrapping up. I am the biggest believer in Cam Ward. He's an alpha attitude. He takes over every locker room. He makes every single throw. He's going to be right up there with Jaden Daniels. He's going to be a Pro Bowler. He could be a borderline Hall of Famer if he stays healthy. He's a great, great quarterback prospect, Cam Ward. He's great. All right. Big-time fan of Cam Ward. Honestly, if I could have any player from last year's draft or Cam Ward, it would maybe be between Jaden Daniels and Cam Ward. Maybe Caleb Williams, but I think Cam Ward is just experienced and he's gonna be awesome. So I already said that to get up to number 1, I would give away this year's 3rd overall pick. I would give next year's 1. And maybe I would give 2 1s and a swap with this year, which is a massive haul for the Tennessee Titans for the Drew Lock game against Indianapolis. But the New York Giants, they might even view Sheduer Sanders higher than Cam Ward. Their quarterback evaluations are very different than my quarterback evaluations. All right? So now to go back to our scenario here, all right? To go back to our scenario, guys. If Cam Ward goes number 1 to Tennessee, and Abdul Carter is going to be on the other side of Myles Garrett in Cleveland. You can then either take Travis Hunter, an offensive lineman, or you can move back, or you could take a defensive end. But this is kind of how I view the board and how I view this year. Travis Hunter would be a number 1 cornerback. You just did draft a cornerback last year in Tay Banks that you'd essentially then be putting on the trade block for maybe a 3rd-round pick. He didn't have really a good rookie season. He was a little bit handsy. He would get burnt. His effort at times was certainly in question with, Tay Banks, but he's only a rookie. He has decent size. He's a physical cornerback. So if you had to go into the season with him being, your cornerback, 1 or 2 with Paulson Adebo, you're feeling pretty good still, because he's still a young football player. He still has potential. You still really believed in him to bring him in. So you then could take Travis Hunter and you could put Tay Banks in a supporting role as a depth piece, or you could look to trade him. And now at wide receiver, you have Wan'Dale Robinson, you have Darius Slayton, Malik Neighbors. It's not the worst position on your team. And then how are you going to deploy Hunter? He's probably going to be mostly used as a cornerback. So he really doesn't fit that much to the New York Giants. He's a sensational player. Are you going to be getting a Devin Hester returner, and are you going to be getting a cornerback that is a literal Hall of Fame level cornerback, like a Marlon Humphrey level talent, maybe a Derek Stingley? Like, what kind of cornerback are you getting in Travis Hunter? And so here's the thing. Say that the Pittsburgh Steelers want to move up to number 3, or say that somebody wants to move up and get Hunter and they'll give you their first next year. You have to consider it. Say that the Miami Dolphins want to give you their first rounder next year. This is the problem now with Daboll and Shane. If it were a new GM and if it were a new head coach, the New York Giants could get a massive haul for trading the 3rd overall pick. Like, you can get a first rounder next year if you weren't desperate. But the Giants are in win now mode. So my thinking behind getting another pick next year is that I'm a big fan of Drew Aller. I think that Aller has all of the tools. He's going to be playing another year in college. I think next year's quarterback class is looking really, really good. There's guys that have a lot of talent, okay, that are going to be very interesting with another year in college. I think Garrett Nussmeier can have a monster year. Lenoris Sellers could be eligible. Dante Moore is a young quarterback with a lot of talent. Nico Yamiyea is a quarterback with massive talent. So next year's quarterback class, again, my pick would probably be Drew Aller at quarterback. And then you even have Arch Manning that is mobile, has decent arm strength, is in the Sarkisian offense, and of course comes from the Manning family. So if the Giants were to stack up on capital for next year's draft and be very patient in this year's draft and maybe give away their pick, that would be interesting, all right? That would be very interesting to me. The New York Giants, so say that you could select Travis Hunter at the third overall pick, all right? Wouldn't completely be opposed to it, but again, wouldn't love it. It would be the worst case scenario probably for the Giants long term. And then the Giants are probably what they're going to end up doing. They can either take Sheduer at number 3, or they're probably going to take Sheduer and Jaxson Dart. They are probably going to mess this thing up because I don't like Jaxson Dart. I don't think he's going to be an NFL-worthy quarterback. I watched him at Ole Miss. He was a good football player at Ole Miss, but he doesn't have the physical, stature to take hits in the NFL and be very durable. His intermediate throws are just, inconsistent. And I don't know if he's going to be in the NFL. I don't know if he'll be a backup for a while. I don't know. I get scared because of Matt Corral. I don't think he has the physical tools to really play in the NFL. And I worry about Sheduer Sanders, his physical tools. Mentally, I actually like Sheduer Sanders more than just about any quarterback in this draft process outside of Cam Ward. I view the confidence as a great asset. I view growing up with Deion Sanders and being the son of Deion and all that attention, that's all positive. So a lot of people are going to view the Sheduer Sanders media as a negative. I view it as a massive positive. You have to have that confidence to go to an HBCU like Jackson State that's a losing HBCU and make it into one of the better programs in the country. And then you have to have a real total confidence about you to take the Colorado Buffaloes in the modern era and make it a very relevant Big 12 team that goes 9-3. I mean, before Sheduer Sanders gets to the NFL, it should be worth praising the job that Deion and Sheduer have done in the Big 12. And real haters of Sheduer and Deion are not going to give any credit for turning Colorado into what was an absolute dumpster fire, a 1-11 program, and now they're out here smashing Utah, beating Oklahoma State, like beating Mike Gundy and beating Kyle Whittingham. This deserves massive, massive kudos for Coach Prime. So every Giants video I do can be about 20 minutes long. I certainly care about the subject matter. So the New York Giants then at number 34, it is going to be really high for a player that's transferred 3 times and a player that's chronically hurt. But this guy, if he stays healthy, could play average NFL starter football to decent NFL starter football. He might have a Kirk Cousins-like season. I don't believe he's going to be as good as Kirk Cousins because that would be a heck of a career. But Tyler Shuck is a very interesting name in round 2. Quinn Ewers in round 2. Jalen Milroe. So those 3 quarterbacks to me are just as appealing as Dart and Sanders. I really don't want Dart or Sanders. I'd rather in round 2 get these other guys. I talked about Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel, to me, second overall quarterback in the class, but you do have Shuck and Quinn Ewers. They're right up there. They're all really, really close. Again, like it's hard to make your mind up on these, kind of outside of Cam Ward. There's probably going to be one quarterback in this class that works, maybe 2.5 work, and you're going to have to be right on them. So if you're the Giants, you can take Hunter at 3 in the nightmare scenario. You take Travis Hunter at 3. And then maybe you can get a defensive tackle, or maybe even you get Josh Cornelius actually with the 34th pick in the draft. And then you're patient. You end up with Ewers or Milroe. That's how I would play it, okay? The best case scenario is Cam Ward at number 3, but that's not going to happen. The best case scenario would be Abdul Carter at number 3, and then you get Cornelius from Oregon. You get him as a right tackle at pick number 34. So then you suddenly have an offensive line of Cornelius, you have Evan Neal, you have Illuminor, you're going to maybe draft another center, but you're going to have John Michael Schmitz is going to be competing with Runyon, and then you're going to have Andrew Thomas. Then if you put Ewers on this roster, you put Dylan Gabriel or Milroe on this roster, that could be really entertaining for the New York Giants. That's the way that I would proceed. How about this for the New York Giants? You get an extra pick next year, so you get a first-rounder next year. You end up getting Russell Wilson. You end up drafting at number 34. You end up drafting Cornelius at number 34, and then you end up later in the second round trading up to draft Quinn Ewers or Dylan Gabriel or Jalen Milroe. That is not a disastrous situation. If you stay at number 34, or maybe you trade back into the first round to get the 5-star offensive lineman Cornelius from Oregon, 1,000,000% you try to do that, and man, like maybe you get a pick swap in the first round, so maybe you end up with like a Mike Green, and maybe you end up, with an offensive tackle and an edge rusher. By trading back into this first round, maybe you go to number 12, you get Tyler Booker, who's an offensive guard. You then go in the second round and maybe try to get, imagine if you got Cornelius and Tyler Booker, 1,000,000%. I would fix this offensive line. I don't love this quarterback class at all. If Tennessee is absolutely taking Cam Ward, you're absolutely screwed and you were late to the party. I think being patient, building up the offensive line is the priority. And then possibly thinking towards next year, thinking towards the future, having a decent year with Russell Wilson and not forcing a quarterback pick. That's the smart and prudent way to go about it.